Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to already a second episode of LANGERR at the mic. And I'm fired up today because I tell you, I wanted to get this video in before the end of the week to wrap up what was a very eventful week of Cowboys offseason news. As we know, Dak Prescott did not sign a long term deal and will play the 2020 season on the franchise tag if there is a 2020 season. But also, Ezekiel Elliott had a couple of things to say on his social media account, so I'm going to be talking about that as well. So let's get into the Dak Prescott situation here, and I'm going to need my glasses for this just so I can read my notes that I took. There we go. What I did is I compiled a pretty extensive list of quarterback contracts since all the way since 2013. Quarterback contracts that I would consider to dictate the quarterback market. Because here's the thing with signing franchise quarterbacks to long-term deals, and this is something that even a lot of fans don't quite understand, is that it doesn't matter whether your franchise quarterback is top 3 in the league, top 5 in the league, top 10. He's not going to get paid based on his ranking necessarily. It's more the quarterback market that's going to dictate what he's going to get paid. And history shows this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name off a couple of quarterback contracts from the early 2010s that follow this trend, guys that you might have forgotten about. And then I listed off a handful of quarterback contracts from the last 2 or 3 years that have led us to where we are currently in the Dak Prescott negotiations or lack thereof. Starting back in March 2013, guess who became the richest quarterback in NFL history? It was none other than Joe Flacco, fresh off a Super Bowl victory with the Baltimore Ravens, who signed a 6-year, $120.6 million contract. And that's what dictated the quarterback market for the early 2010s. Shortly after that, Matt Ryan signed a 5-year, $103.75 million contract, but at the same approximate average annual value of $20.7 million per season. And in the same offseason, our good friend Tony Romo signed a 6-year, $108 million contract at an average annual value of $18 million. Now, while that is slightly below the market value of the two contracts I just mentioned, here's where things get very interesting. A year later, in 2014, Jay Cutler, yes, Jay Cutler signed a 7-year, $126 million contract with the Chicago Bears at an average annual value of $18.1 million per season. Yes, Jay Cutler, $126 million. And finally, in the same offseason, our good friend Andy Dalton signed a 6-year, $96 million contract at $16 million per season on average in that 2014 offseason. So far, what all this means is that if you're going to keep your franchise quarterback, you either have to commit to him long term or pay him a very high average annual salary if you're serious about keeping him. And again, it doesn't matter whether your quarterback is top 5 or top 15. If you're serious about keeping him, you either got to pay him a lot or for a long time. Because I think we can both agree that Jay Cutler and Andy Dalton at no point in their careers were maybe top 10 guys, but they definitely weren't top 5 guys. So now let's skip ahead all the way to 2018, where we got closer to the contracts that became more relevant to the Dak Prescott negotiations. Starting with Jimmy Garoppolo, who at the time had not even played a full season with the San Francisco 49ers yet, but the San Francisco 49ers decided to sign him to a 5-year, $137.5 million contract at an average annual value of $27.5, which is pretty much the same as the contract that Matt Stafford had signed in 2017, a 5-year, $135 million contract at $27 million per season on average. That was followed up by Kirk Cousins signing a 3-year, $84 million contract with the Minnesota Vikings as an unrestricted free agent with an average annual value of $28 million per season. Then Matt Ryan signed another extension with the Atlanta Falcons at 5 years, $150 million in total at an average annual value of $30 million per season. And Aaron Rodgers signed a 4-year extension with the Green Bay Packers at $134 million in total with a 33.5 average annual value per season. Then fast forward to 2019, where Carson Wentz signs a 4-year, $128 million extension with the Eagles at an average value of 32 per season, which was then up by Jared Goff, who signed an extension with the LA Rams at 4 years, $134 million in total at 33.5 average per season. All while Russell Wilson signs the highest or the richest contract at the time in NFL history at 4 years, $140 million in total, $35 million on average per season. And finally, that was upped yet again by Patrick Mahomes signing a 10-year extension with the Kansas City Chiefs at $450 million in total, an average value of $45 million per season, the new richest contract in NFL history. So what does all of this mean for Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys? It means that both parties screwed up big time. I'm not making this video to argue whether or not Dak Prescott should get paid, because Dak Prescott should get paid and he should be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys going forward. He has proven it. But both the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott screwed up big time in this negotiation process, because from the Dallas Cowboys perspective, they had over an entire year to get this negotiation and this contract done, and they should have done so before the 2019 season. And it should have been, they could have done a 4-year contract, even though they wanted a 5th year in the contract. They should have done a 4-year contract at around the same numbers as Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, and Russell Wilson, which is roughly in the ballpark of $130 million in total, $34 million per season on average is what the contract could have been and what it should have been. And this should have been done before the 2019 season. So what does this mean for the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott going forward? It means that Dak Prescott will naturally play out the 2020 season on the $31.4 million franchise tag, if, of course, there is a 2020 season. And the Dallas Cowboys can put the tag on him again for the 2021 season, which I believe will be valued around $37.5 million for 2021. But the big problem for the Dallas Cowboys now is that if they decide to renegotiate with Dak at the end of the 2020 season, and they decide to put down an offer that is similar to the Goff or Wentz or Wilson contracts I discussed earlier, or even the final offer that was on the table this year, then there is absolutely no way that Dak Prescott and his agent Todd France go with that, because it'll be laughable compared to what the market will be at that point. Because they'll be looking at a roughly $37.5 million franchise tag for 2021, or they could just walk in free agency in 2021 and get paid like an unrestricted free agent top 10 quarterback. Or if the Cowboys put the tag on Dak again for the 2021 season, again at a rate of around $37.5 million, and then finally attempt to renegotiate long-term again in 2022, well, the starting point for that renegotiation will be much, much higher than what it could have been had they just gotten the deal done last year, where it could have been around $34 million a year. But probably in 2022, they'll be looking at something well north of $40 million a year. And especially if Dak hits unrestricted free agency at that point, well, he'll be easily looking at a contract well north of $40 million on average per year. And all that is without even mentioning what implications the Deshaun Watson contract will have on Dak's long-term future. So at the end of the day, for Dak Prescott to remain the long-term quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, it will inevitably cost them a lot more than it would have been to have if they had just signed him before the 2019 season. And the best case scenario that Cowboys fans can hope for is that Dak continues to progress in his play as he's done since his 2016 rookie season, and that he plays at a high enough level to justify getting paid north of $40 million per year. Now I'd like to turn the page and talk about Ezekiel Elliott. So Zeke had this to say on his Twitter account earlier this week. There are a lot of great backs in this league, but I don't understand why the media has to talk down on my game just to uplift other backs. We are all talented football players and can ball. Check the stats. Since I entered this league, I have dominated year in, year out. Put some respect on my name. Women lie, men lie, the stats don't. Go do your homework. Almost 1,800 scrimmage yards and 14 TDs with no training camp, and now I'm not the same back. I do appreciate the standard you guys hold me to, though, lol. I promise you, no one holds me to a higher standard than myself. So first of all, Zeke, let me start off by saying that you are a great back. Cowboys Nation loves you, and you are one of the best backs in the league, but the criticism is quite warranted. Right now, I'm going to give you a quick summary of Ezekiel Elliott's career since he entered the league in 2016. Ezekiel Elliott is drafted 4th overall out of Ohio State by the Dallas Cowboys in the 2016 NFL Draft, and right away in his rookie season goes on to lead the league in rushing, adds 363 reception yards, and is good for 2nd in total yardage on the season, good enough for first-team All-Pro status. And he helped lead the Cowboys to a 13-3 record. And even though the Cowboys lost, unfortunately, in the division round to the Green Bay Packers, so far so good. He then has a troubled 2017 offseason, which I won't get into details about, but that gets him suspended 6 games in the 2017 season after a lengthy legal battle. He then turns in a decently productive 2017 season, rushing for almost 1,000 yards and averaging 4.06 yards per carry, again, despite being suspended 6 games and also dealing with tons of off-the-field distractions because of the legal dispute, but we could give him a slight pass for that for now. He then turns in a very solid 2018 season, leading the league in rushing again, and is once again 2nd in all-purpose yardage, averaging 4.72 yards per carry, and making it to his 2nd Pro Bowl. Then, however, he decides to hold out for a new contract in the 2019 offseason, missing most of training camp and organized team activities, even though he has 2 years left on his rookie deal. Zeke gets his contract, making him one of the richest running backs in the league, and he turns in a good but not great season. He's still 4th in the league in rushing, averaging 4.51 yards per carry, and still 2nd overall in all-purpose yards. So, again, a good season, but not great compared to the previous seasons. Here's my problem now. Having been drafted 4th overall as a running back, that means that the expectation is that Zeke is supposed to be a difference maker on the roster, especially now that he's one of the richest running backs in the NFL. And while Zeke has led the league in rushing and has been 2nd in all-purpose yardage in 2 of the 4 years that he's been in the league, the number of big or explosive rushes that Zeke has had have trended downward since his 2016 rookie season. In 2016, Ezekiel Elliott led the league with 14 explosive carries, being carries that are greater than 20 yards. He followed that up with 5 in 2017, which, again, we could give a sort of pass for that because he was suspended 6 games. But then in 2018, he was back up again at 11 explosive runs, which was good for 2nd in the league. But then last year in 2019, he turned in a disappointing 4 explosive runs of greater than 20-plus yards, which is actually, oddly enough, puts him tied with his teammate Tony Pollard, who had just about less than half the carries that Zeke had last year. So my message to Ezekiel Elliott is this. You were drafted 4th overall and paid to be one of the richest running backs in the NFL to be one of the best running backs in the NFL. So I'd say you have quite a lot of respect to your name already given where you were drafted and given that your team decided to pay you before paying their quarterback in a quarterback-driven league. So even though for the first 3 years of your career you were one of the best running backs in the NFL, last year you were objectively outperformed by 3 running backs. 1, Derrick Henry, who, by the way, was drafted around later than you in the same draft. Number 2, Nick Chubb. And number 3, Christian McCaffrey. And a case can be made that you weren't a top 5 running back in the NFL last year. And definitely don't use missing training camp as an excuse when you held out for your money. So why don't you show us that you are truly one of the best in 2020, assuming there's a season? Take a simple outside run to the left, 60 yards to the end zone, just like Nick Chubb or Dalvin Cook. Or break 4 or 5 tackles on a 90-yard run to the end zone like Derrick Henry. You're probably going to get less carries under Mike McCarthy now that CeeDee Lamb has been added to a receiving core that already has Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. But when you do get the ball, be a difference maker and prove us wrong. And that's all I have to say for today. Just really want to get this video in before the weekend to react to the Dak non-signing and send a strong but positive message to Ezekiel Elliott. And yeah, be sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you know when my next video comes out. And follow me on Twitter with my Twitter handle right in the description below. And yeah, have a great weekend. Thank you for watching another video of LANGERR on the mic.